What's going on, y'all? KM Best here. You might know this series as a hot take series, but I'm gonna let you in on a little bit of a secret. Sometimes I just do these videos when I want to rant about something. Today is one of those times. I posted a hot takes request on Twitter, hoping that I would get back some things that would allow me to talk about what I already wanted to talk about. So let's get into it. While the IGN debacle was disappointing, the news was overall good and just framed really poorly. I may be coping. So this is what I really wanted to talk about in excess. Like this is something that I thought, okay, I could probably make a video about this alone. So we're going to do a decent amount of diving into this. The IGN debacle being referred to here is Second Dinner's announcement of their new roadmap and the things on that roadmap, and how they planned on announcing it was at an IGN Live. It never ended up airing. They did present it, but it never ended up airing, so we never saw it. I know people who watched for 6 hours sitting through a guy rating the top 10 Nintendo characters of all time, just waiting for news about Marvel Snap, only to get a release of the news bulletin in the game, which didn't really cover any of the things that people actually wanted to hear, and instead started out with an acknowledgement that they were no longer going to be working on Mastery, and explained that by saying, we ran into some technical problems, hashtag game dev. And this is what I really wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about what I consider maybe the biggest thing Second Dinner gets consistently incorrect. Because I think no matter what you think about their monetization, they are executing on their vision in that monetization. No matter what you think about the core gameplay, what card is broken, what card people are complaining about, they are executing on what their vision is in those areas. What they are not executing on their vision in is communication. And this IGN Live stuff is a phenomenal example of that to me. When we talk about what that announcement was, what I have learned over the past few days via some team answers on Discord, and we'll get to that in a second, is that the Deadpool's Diner will have Cassandra Nova, a card available for free. You will just have to play that mode a bunch. You can grind it out and get a free card. The fact that we did not know this the day of the IGN Live is absurd. It's an absurdity. And when I think of events like this is not the first time that Marvel Snap has announced something in such a way that it looks like an L, and then when you dive into the actual what's happening, it ends up being a good thing. And that is infuriating to me, because on the one hand, what ends up happening to me as a creator is I get put in the line of fire. People are always asking me stuff like, oh, aren't you going to quit? Isn't this game dying? And it's like, I don't know or care. And so, there's all of this animus that gets directed at people like me who, for some reason, are the public faces of the game. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And so what I wanted to talk about is specifically how I would have communicated the announcement of what they announced at IGN. Because to me, what they announced and the way they announced it sort of went contradictory to each other. So, assuming I'm the person who works at Second Dinner doing comms, the first thing I do is I say, what is our top line communique here? What is the first thing we want to communicate? We don't want to overpromise this Deadpool's Diner game mode. It's cool, but it's not like a full new game mode, but it's a cool event. What we want to do is focus on what will players get out of this, what the value they will take home from it is. And the value they will take home from it is free-to-play players will get a card for free. That's dope. That's my top line. That's the first thing I say at this event is we know that people have been worried about card acquisition in our game. We are looking at new ways to make that happen. And here is the first one. It's an event where you get to play a cool game mode of Marvel Snap and get the card for free. Top line thing. Instead, their top line thing was, we're scrapping Mastery, hashtag game dev. And it's like, if you lead with what you are doing that is bad, I just don't understand how you expect people to react. When I make one of my videos, one of the things that I have taken to doing is saying, hey, I'm KM Best. I'm a top ranked Marvel Snap player because I lead with what I'm good at. I don't lead with, hey, I'm KM Best. Sometimes when I lose, I yell at people in my Twitch chat. Why would I lead with that? Like, why would you try to introduce things with that? And it's like, yes, it is important to acknowledge your flaws and try to work on them and talk about them sometimes, but you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And the first impression people had of this most recent roadmap was A, wow, there's a lot less stuff on that. B, where's the mastery? C, hashtag game dev LOL. What we didn't come away from the event knowing was that there was a free card on it. I just don't understand how you can have an event that is so objectively good and not tell people the good part about it. Not even not lead with it, just not tell people. And it frustrates me. I think that this is something that, while in almost every other aspect of the game, and I think I do want to do a special shout out here, the card people at Second Dinner are crushing it. They keep making good, interesting, and relatively balanced cards. They keep balancing the meta in decent ways. The only critique I would ever have from them is they need to focus a little more on the gameplay experience, which is vastly harder than just making sure things are balanced. But I think mostly they're doing a great job there. And one other thing that they deserve praise on is Second Dinner is very good at compensation, to the point that most of the time, after they make a mistake and then compensate for it, I see people saying, God, I wish I was part of the people who got screwed over originally. I would take that trade any day of the week. Like after the US agent compensation, there were people complaining how they didn't get to spend their keys on US agent and get them refunded. Or like I've seen people saying, man, I really wish I'd bought that bundle. I would have gotten 8,000 gold back. Like they're very generous at that, but it's probably not a good thing to have the thing you're best at, be making up for the mistakes you made. And I just feel like, I don't know, maybe not everything is comms, but the fact that I came away from that day, that event, that announcement, not knowing if there was going to be a free card or if it was going to be like leagues where I would have to spend money to get perks to get the right amount of points, or how easily acquirable the card was, or whether the base Cassandra Nova was on the reward track and it was just the variant that was super high on the reward tracker, how any of that worked. It just feels like that would be the things that I would want to be announcing in that scenario. And I just don't understand why they don't lead with their best foot forward in cases like this. You have a huge announcement in front of you, and you're announcing something that to me sounds objectively good. You're saying, look, this is a good card. Cassandra Nova looks like a good card, a card that is at the very least comparably powerful to everything else releasing that month. And you don't lead with, you can get her without spending any money. You don't lead with that. And I don't really understand why. It's actually a good thing that they're taking a breather from pumping out new features to improve client stability and performance. It is. I think one thing that I hear a lot from people who complain about this stuff is that if they're spending the amount of money people are spending on this game, I don't think that client stability performance should be an issue this deep in. And I think that's like a reasonable expectation to have. I do think that I remember very specifically, I think it was Interrobang left exactly this feedback like 2 or 3 episodes of Hot Takes ago, where it was like he said almost to a T that they needed to stop focusing on like borders or whatever and start focusing on making sure the game works better. And I think that is basically true. But I think there's like this little rhetorical sleight of hand being done here, where when some people talk about new features, what they mean is more ways of monetization. And when other people talk about new features, what they mean is more ways of unmonetization. And so, like, I think a lot of people reading this, what they think about the sentence on the screen right now is going to be much more dependent on what they think of when they think of new features. Because to us, when we think of new features, what we think of is like, I don't know, a draft mode where you can acquire cards better, right? But also when we think of new features, we have to think about borders that you can buy for the most amount of money ever. People assume the worst of Second Dinner, but this level of transparency is unheard of, which means sometimes things get canceled because they won't work out. I think that is roughly true, and I think Mason would know what he's talking about for whatever that's worth. Mason is someone who has worked with game companies in the space before. And so if he's out here saying that this level of transparency is unheard of for a company in the space, I trust it. I wouldn't really be able to fact check it, but I believe him. And I think that maybe that is true. And I think that it is interesting that this transparency comes with such downsides, because I think part of why the community reacts the way they do is because when you talk about something like character mastery, there were people making purchase decisions based on how transparent the devs were being about it, right? And when they run into a problem with that, that transparency comes back and hurts them, because suddenly there are people who have made purchase decisions based on your transparency. And if you weren't being transparent about it, if you weren't being, best practices in this case, then they wouldn't have been in a position to be hurt in the first place. And I don't want to sit here and say Second Dinner needs to tell us less, but I do think there's probably something to that. At the very least, it feels like safer community management to tell us less and to tell us only the good stuff. I don't know. It does sort of feel, in a way, like they are being punished for being very open about this. But at the same time, it's like, if you thought there was a potential issue that you could run into and you were still talking like this was a guarantee, that's not an issue of transparency. It's an issue of you not foreseeing the issue. For the record, I do believe that they actually just ran into something with character mastery and they made it unworkable. And I don't know what that could possibly be because I'm an idiot. But it does sort of make sense to me that it's like, okay, we ran into this. We need to fix X, Y, Z, ABC first. And then we will put that on the back burner because we have to fix X, Y, Z, ABC. And then we'll see if people still want it. And so one thing I think actually would be helpful would be people registering their displeasure with that. Like, I can't really get mad at people for saying, no, this sucks. We want this feature, because the more people say, no, this sucks, we want this feature, the more they're going to be like, all right, we really actually do have to deliver on that. And I think there is a baseline level of trust I have that they are receptive to feedback like this, because they very much have been in the past. There should be more balancing around lower base power and higher ability. Gilgamesh, 5 cost, -2 power, +2 for each green text. Prof X, 5 cost, -1 power. Angela, 2 -1. Sage, 3 -1 or 2. Thena, 2 -1. Okay. So issues with that are that it actually feels like the more they try to do that, the more space they open up for that to be exploited. And what I mean by that is, I'm releasing this video the day Cersei comes out. So let's say they release an on reveal card that is balanced around having -1 power. That on reveal card is going to be very strong. So it's like a 5 -1 with a really powerful on reveal. Oh, I Cersei'd it. It's a Hulk now. Oh, I blinked it. It's a Hulk now. Oh, I Ravona'd it. It's a 4 cost now. I think there's actually more ways to take advantage of this than we've ever had in the game before. There are so many ways to turn high impact ability, low power into pure upside, right? We're looking at Ravonna being a main thing right now, but we had a blink meta just a second ago when there was a 4-2 leech, right? We could very easily have a Cersei meta in a world where 5-1 Professor X isn't doing this stuff. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. And that's not even to dive into the economics of it. I strongly suspect that if you release a card with negative power, it will just sell poorly. And that is effectively a very bad thing for the game. Like, I strongly suspect that this would be a recipe for exploitable designs, and B, designs that wouldn't really sell well because you have to exploit them for them to be good. And so a bunch of good players look at that and see, I can really do a bunch of damage with this by turning the downside into an upside. But your average player just looks at that and sees downside. So I think, generally speaking, this is the kind of thing that, like, a good player comes up with as a balance solution, only looking at what good players want. I think this is a little bit limited in scope. Hot and featured locations are good for the game. It only becomes a problem when you play for multiple hours straight, which is kind of the opposite of Snap's intent. They're also good for content creators, as they can create new decks to leverage the location and drive views. I can't speak to what Snap's intent is, but I can speak to being a content creator in hot locations and featured locations, and they suck. Because look at when this video is coming out. It's probably going to come out like, 4 or 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. Most of my videos come out between, 2 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. Let's say I want to make a hot location deck. I'm not going to just phone it in and theory craft some stuff. I'm going to go play on the hot location for a while. The hot location starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to go play, let's say 4 hours. It's 7 p.m. Eastern. I have a good deck. I go make my video. I go get all the footage, put it in there. Usually that's like 40 minutes of footage out of the 4 hours. I record for 20 minutes of just one taking my deck guide because I'm very lucky to be able to be at least bare minimum quality public speaking so that I can just sort of do that like I'm doing right now. And so that's another hour probably. We got to wait for the video to render. So by the time the video gets up, it's probably 8 or 9 Eastern. We are more than 6 hours into the hot location, probably, if we're going to be a little bit generous. So there's 18 hours of the video being relevant, and that is best possible case scenario. Then the video is never relevant again, ever. Nobody ever clicks on it ever, ever, ever again. That's bad for me. I don't really know a better way to put it. One of the reasons I skip hot locations is because, I want to talk about how good cards are in their normal state. I want to be able to give recommendations to the general state of Marvel Snap. When a hot location that's good with a card that just came out is good, and then that card is good on the hot location, that's like a very no shit Sherlock kind of move. I don't think people are learning anything from that. So I will say, as a content creator, the thing that Marvel Snap does that's best for me, by far, is frequent balance patches. People love watching those videos. They love hearing those takes. The thing that Marvel Snap does that's worse for me, by far, is frequent hot and featured locations. And this is not to say anything about, the things that are actually, really bad for me, which is, the fact that I can't do budget content, stuff like that, just general economy stuff, taking the economy out of the picture here, just in terms of things they do on a weekly basis. The best one for me by far is patches. The worst one for me by far is hot and featured locations. You, Brendan, and Glenn Jones look too similar, and it gets confusing seeing the three of you on the same podcast. No, we don't, but I did respond to this and accidentally dunked on Glenn Jones. I'm sorry, Glenn. Alliances is a huge update that is buried under poor communication and a confusing new event that no one asked for. This is what I was talking about at the beginning, right? There should not be people out there saying this is a confusing new event that no one asked for, because one thing every single person who plays this game asks for is free cards. This is the free cards event. We shouldn't be calling it confusing, but we have to because it wasn't explained to us that this was the free cards event. Prof Ball gets nerfed and y'all will still complain. You're the problem with the game. This one bugs me, I'll be honest with you, because it's I am simultaneously the villain for posting a bunch of Prof Ball decks, and then also the villain for saying that it's a little bit imbalanced. Somehow, the people that hate people that play meta hate me because I play meta. And then the people that play meta hate me because I think that the stuff I'm playing is a little bit overtuned. And it's yes, there will always be a best deck. You should always try as hard as you can to win. Duh. I don't necessarily think that means they shouldn't do balance changes because of it. Professor X is pretty demonstrably very powerful and not very fun. When I checked the win rates recently, Professor X was plus 0.15 cubes, plus 52.6% win rate and top 10% infinite. It's definitely got numbers that are nerf worthy, and it's a card everyone seems to dislike. And I'm pretty consistent on my position that they should nerf it and Hela. And that is still my position. I think that the metagame needs to go back to a lower power level personally, but I am not the person making those calls. So I don't really know why you're getting mad at me over it or calling me the problem. We desperately need more advanced communication around live events like Conqueror's the IGN announcement. I will give them a bit of a pass on the IGN announcement because my understanding is they basically had no control over it. They were under the impression that, we're going to go do this and it's going to be on the stream and it's going to be cool. And it's going to happen around this time. And that just did not happen for whatever reason on IGN's end, is what I gathered from watching it. Conquerors, though, it does seem like maybe they should advertise a little bit more. For the record, I got a lot of people saying, like, Cam, aren't you mad you're not in Conquerors? And to those people, I would like to say, absolutely not. I am overjoyed that they're getting new blood in. Like, with all due respect to Second Dinner and Newverse, people who run Conquerors, I think that it is so important to grow the Marvel Snap streaming scene, because one of the things that really sticks with me is so many of the biggest creators in Marvel Snap were people who were playing in the beta. Me and Alex Kocha were streaming to like 10 people. We had Dara, who just like was the first Marvel Snap streamer ever, I think. We had Binks. Me and Binks used to commentate Cube Rush, which was a tournament style thing that we did for maybe 25 people. Like, every one of those people, Cozy used to show up in chat and use his little Charmander emote and would like gift 5 subs, and that would be like the most subs I'd ever seen. All of these people, all of us, are now sort of, this is where we actually are like Ivory Tower elitists, right? Because we've been playing the game the whole time. We understand all this stuff ahead of time. We have our collections already pre-built. If you are someone who is a streamer and wants to get into making Marvel Snap content, how do you get eyes on you? How do you do it? How do you say, I'm going to start playing Marvel Snap, and then now it's 3 months later and you finally have a decent collection? What were you doing for those 3 months? Is that just like your startup costs 3 months of time and a bunch of money? And so one of the things that I really try to do is what I can do is I can vouch for good players, good deck builders, and that's what I do, right? I have those people on my channel. I have a little stream team, which if it sits below my Twitch, you click it, and a bunch of people who I like are in there. I do what I can to make sure that people who are maybe not part of that club are able to get eyes on them when they deserve it, right? And I get that it's like a very, I'm very focused on competitive, I'm focused on people that try hard. I get it, right? So like I'm myopic in that way. But when I think about stuff like this, and I get I'm ADHDing a little bit here, but when I think about stuff like this, the constant to me is it's very hard for people who are not already benefiting from like the systemic viewership boost that being here since day one will get you to get to that level. It's very hard to do. And I think that it is absolutely phenomenal that Conquerors is putting those people in there. That is my honest opinion. Now, if they wanted me to host, I would jump at that in a second. That is a dream job. Absolutely. I would love to, right? But when you talk about who and what and all of that stuff, who should be competing, I am overjoyed, for example, that Yo Woody got in. I am overjoyed. Like, if they had asked me to be in it, I probably would have told them, no, but here are some people who should be, and he would have been one of those people. So whatever happened, I'm very happy with it. Mastery would have made a ton of money. SD actually scrapped it because of technical constraints. This is no different to them scrapping Old Kitty. Sure. I mean, I don't really have any way of knowing that, but I don't think there are going to be people in the comments who disagree with me. I don't think they would just come out there and lie about this. I do think they probably ran into some technical issues, especially considering the technical issues that have made it to the live build. It's a very easy thing to believe. I don't know if it would have made a ton of money. I think it probably would have made a ton of money. I think the worry that I have for it is the people who were already sort of pot committed. Like I talked to Alex Kocha about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I really like She-Hulk, so I filled out the She-Hulk whale track on the Newverse website, which is a $50 whale track, to get a She-Hulk variant because I thought, mastery would eventually reward me for doing this." And I'm sure he's like, to some degree, it's like, I like She-Hulk, I like that variant, I'll probably use it. But to another degree, it's like, you are kind of making purchases that are based on your expectations of the future, and to have those expectations be sort of rudely dashed, I think is a mistake. And I will say, I think that the way this was communicated did not address the seriousness of the issue, where it was like, you know how game dev is, right, folks? And it's like, no, I really don't. I don't know how game dev is. I'm sorry. I just like, if I were one of those people who was making purchases based on this, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Of course I don't know. Tell me what's going on. And I think that's just another like communication thing. Shang-Chi should go back to killing nines, and Elias should go back to deleting cards. I agree with half of this. I think Shang-Chi could go back to killing nines. I think that guy needs a little bit of help, honestly. Like, we've been in a lot of metas where Shang-Chi is not all that good. I think it would be fine to put him back to killing nines. I don't think they'll ever do that because I feel like they've made several balance changes predicated on that, like Jessica Jones going to ending up being a total of 9 power, stuff like that. A lot of their balance seems to be like not necessarily responding to Shang-Chi, but if they had to move Shang-Chi back to 9, they would have to move all this other stuff down too. And I don't think that seems worth doing. I do think it could happen though. Elias going back to deleting cards seems bad. I think one thing that people should get through their heads is I want Second Dinner to balance more around the game being fun. I want more of that. I don't want less of that. So I don't think you're ever going to find any purchase with me. I'm actually frustrated with the fact that they don't do it enough, getting rid of things that are very unfun. Because I get it, like fun is subjective. One person's fun is another person's, oh my God, I hate this game. I get it. And so maybe it's just pointless to do that. But I do think, generally speaking, we can say that some things are fun and some things aren't fun. Being unable to play your cards is not very fun. Having your cards unceremoniously removed and nothing happening is not very fun. Being able to play your cards but have them totally not matter is not very fun. And those are sort of the things that I would look to get a little bit less of in the meta. I don't think it's ever possible to have a card game meta game at the top end that doesn't have some aspect of that stuff, because that's powerful for a reason, right? If you prevent your opponent from playing cards, well, then you can't lose. If your opponent's cards don't do anything, well, then you can't lose. If your opponent can't interact with you meaningfully, well, then you can't lose. Like, there is going to be, like, just trying to win will involve some degree of that. I just think that maybe they should keep a little bit of a lid on it if they can. I don't know if it's possible though. I really don't. So I think a lot for me will depend on what the upcoming balance patch on Thursday holds. I'm interested to see. And I think that I would like to see concerted effort in that area. And I realize that's not what everyone would like to see because people's definitions of fun are different. And I totally understand that. I just request, please, don't yell at me on the internet. You're probably still going to yell at me on the internet. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for making it through that video. I realize I feel like I was a little like ranty there, but that's what this is for. This is my Stephen A. Smith moment where I am just going to get on TV and make a buffoon of myself yelling about something that I am clearly passionate about, but maybe don't have all the info on. Thank you so much. As always, I've been Cam Best. I will see you in the next one. You have been phenomenal.